Today on Political Excess, we've got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez up against Matt Gaetz in this hypothetical 2024 matchup. I had this suggested to me in the comments. I did the coin flip battle. AOC won that, and it was suggested I do the regular matchup. This is a difficult one, but I'm going to try to do it anyway. So let's get started. And how do I see this one going? Well, both of them are in Congress, U.S. representatives. AOC from New York, Matt Gaetz is from Florida. And I think they're both regarded as controversial. AOC would be regarded as on the fringe for the left. Matt Gaetz, he's probably regarded as on the fringe for the right. If you go to personality, personally, in a vacuum, taking out all of their positions, I would think Matt Gaetz is going to be a little bit more relatable to the broader electorate. AOC has sometimes been a fighter, and that does have its strengths on occasion, but I do think a little bit more broadly, it's going to be more off-putting. Now, AOC, we don't know how she's going to run. She used to be an outsider, really trying to shake up the establishment Democrats. She seems to have largely backpedaled on that, kind of cozied up and become establishment adjacent. Now, a lot of progressives think she's sold out, and some of that would cost her some turnout. Now, Matt Gaetz, he has his own baggage, he has his own scandals. He would be regarded as a little bit too outside the mainstream for the Republicans. But when it comes down to it, both of these candidates, I don't really know what issues they're going to run on. They're both going to want to pivot to the center, that's for sure. And I think a lot of voters don't really know much about these candidates outside of the quick headlines we see about how extreme they are. So, having said all that, it's going to be tough. Let's dive in, start in Alaska, and that'll be low double digits safe for Matt Gaetz. Why safe for AOC? Washington, Oregon, California, safe for AOC. Nevada, that's a purple state. It would be competitive. I could see it going either way. I think Democratic voters prefer a little bit more progressive candidates in Nevada, even though the state might be trending a little bit toward the right. I ended up settling on a tilt for AOC. Idaho and Utah, safe for Gaetz. In Arizona, that's another tough call that has drifted away from the Republicans. They seem to keep coming up short there. And after thinking about it, eventually I settled on a tilt for AOC. Montana and Wyoming, safe for Gaetz. Colorado, low double digits, safe for AOC. New Mexico, that's going to be likely for AOC. North and South Dakota, safe for Gaetz. Nebraska at large, safe for Gaetz. The 2nd District, that's with Omaha, got a little bit redder after redistricting, but I don't think the trends are with the Republicans there, and I think AOC would win that by at least a couple of points. Leans for AOC. Kansas and Oklahoma, over 10 points, safe for Gaetz. Texas, that'll still be over 5 points, likely for Gaetz. Minnesota, over 5 points likely for AOC. Iowa, that'll be between 5 and 10 points, likely for Matt Gaetz. Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, safe for Gaetz. Wisconsin, yet another tough call. It was borderline for me. I think the trends here are also slightly toward the right. I think there is some more Republican vote that is not yet fully tapped, and if those trends continued at all, then I think Matt Gaetz would win it by a tilt margin, and that's what I went with. Illinois, safe for AOC. Michigan, another tough one. Due to the economic issues and the Republicans coming up short in the midterms, I am going to give this to AOC by a tilt margin. Indiana, safe for Gaetz. Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama, safe for Gaetz. How about Florida? This would be Matt Gaetz' home state. Not just because the Republicans had a landslide in the midterms doesn't mean that's going to continue, but in this matchup, I think AOC would be heavily painted as a socialist. That certainly does not play well in South Florida. Even if Matt Gaetz is viewed as controversial, he's definitely going to win Florida, and he's going to get a little bit of a home state boost, and I think that'll put him just over 10 points, and that's going to be safe for Gaetz. Now let's go one state north to Georgia. This is another very tricky state. Those suburbs around Atlanta, Cobb and Gwinnett counties, those have moved toward the left. Republicans might be maxed out in the rural counties, so it's going to be very tough. But if AOC is viewed as a little bit too extreme, that would cost her maybe a half a point up to a point in some of those suburbs. And that, I think, could give Matt Gaetz enough to squeak out a win here, and Gaetz gets it by a tilt. South Carolina, safe for Gaetz. North Carolina, that's going to be leans for Matt Gaetz. Let's go to Ohio. That's going to be likely for Gaetz. West Virginia, safe for Gaetz. Up to Maine, at large, likely for AOC. 1st District, safe for AOC. 2nd District, that's the redder, more Trump-friendly district. I think Gaetz is going to win that. Not sure the margin. I put it as a lean. New Hampshire, that'll probably be mid-single digits, likely for AOC. Now we've got Vermont, AOC's home state of New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Washington, D.C. Those are going to be safe for AOC. Now we've got Pennsylvania. This is another very tough call for me. I think the Republicans dropped the ball there in the midterms, both for Senate and governor, even some of the House races, and actually even in the state legislature. So it is a tough call for me. I ended up settling on a tilt for AOC. And finally, the last state is Virginia, and that I have as a likely for AOC. And there's your grand total, 277 for AOC, 261 for Matt Gaetz. So AOC does very narrowly win this election, but my confidence level is low. I do have 5 tilts on here: Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. AOC got 4 out of those 5. Any little thing I think could sway this election. The national environment, the major issues at the time, running mates, that's all going to be a factor. The biggest unknown, though, for me, I think, is which issues they're actually going to run on. I think there's questions on both sides. And as I said, if AOC appears to not be as cozy with the establishment, that's going to help her, but she's going to have to try to reimagine herself. She has come off as more of a celebrity type of politician. Some of her views, especially on some social issues and the left-wing identity politics, that's going to be off-putting, and that's going to hurt her in some of the suburbs, some of the Rust Belt states. Now, if she talks about economics, especially healthcare and some workers' issues, that is what I think would put her over the top. So it depends which issues she wants to run on. Matt Gaetz, if he goes America first, if he pushes back on some of the crime issues and immigration, discusses some education policy, that I think is going to help Matt Gaetz. The media is probably going to be more against Matt Gaetz. Some of his past scandals, that could come up, that could cost him some voters in some of these states. AOC could have some scandals flare up, and that could hurt her as well. But as I said at the very beginning, they're going to have to pivot to the center. And that, I think, is going to be the biggest challenge. Are they going to come off as genuine, or are they going to come off as selling out and inauthentic? And how about an issue like Ukraine? Is it going to be indefinite support, or using that kind of money to solve some domestic issues? They got to get their bases to turn out for sure. AOC's got to get those progressives out. Matt Gaetz, he's got to get the Trump voters to turn out. And he can't just do it in a place like Florida. I'm sure the ads would be horrible for this race. It would be constantly negative, far left and far right attacks. I think voters would get some burnout, and some of them might want to stay home. But the last thing I'll say is the name recognition. AOC is probably going to have a little bit higher than Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz got a little bit more attention during the Speaker of the House vote, but both of them, they're just in the U.S. House. A lot of voters nationally, and a lot of voters who don't really follow politics too much, they're not going to know a whole lot about them. They might think they're too extreme on a glance, but I think they're going to want to hear more substance about where they stand on economic and social and cultural issues. So there's a lot of unknowns for me in this race. I tried to analyze it as fairly as I could, but I could see some people taking a different route. Some of you might say AOC is totally crazy. There's no way she would win some of these states. Some of you might say Matt Gaetz, he's completely on the fringe. He would lose a couple more states. So I get it. It's not an easy one to analyze, but this is what I settled on. So let me know in the comments, do you mostly agree with this map? Or do you disagree on 5, 10, maybe even 15 states somehow? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.